एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो. चलो ये कर लेते हैं. This could be a great intro.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
Hi, I'm Madan Somasundaram, co-founder of Sugar.Fit.
Did you know that India is home to almost 80 million diabetics, putting us second in ranking in the world? And with the kind of sedentary lifestyle that we now lead, this number is only going to explode. And this is the problem that Sugar.Fit is targeting. Sugar.Fit is a health tech startup that uses a combination of data science and habit science to help people fight diabetes. Madan, the co-founder of Sugar.Fit, was educated in the West, but excited by the pace of disruption in India, decided to build something here. This conversation is full of amazing insights around disrupting healthcare, building habits, changing user behavior, and creating impact at scale. Here's Madan talking about his entrepreneurial journey, starting with his first venture, which was in the space of primary healthcare within CureFit.
If you like to hear stories of founders, then we have tons of great stories from entrepreneurs who have built billion-dollar businesses. Just search for the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app like Spotify, Gaana, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the show.
After I went back to my last year, I graduated, and I was then just packed my bags as soon as I graduated and moved to India. And there was no plan of CureFit or anything, and I actually spent 3 months just talking to tons of people. I put up base first in Bombay and just met lots of people across all cities. Like, I was very clear I wanted to do something in healthcare, deep healthcare, partly because I just felt just massive potential to impact millions of people. Obviously, if you create the right business, there's good outcome you can create, but also have very mission-driven business. And three, again, just technology will play a huge part, right, going forward. So I think those were the fundamental reasons. So I spent 2-3 months. I was just, at one point, I was close to narrowing in on something in healthcare, more on the diagnostic side. And again, at that time, Mukesh and I was speaking, and he's like, we are also looking at building out something in the primary care space through CareFit. Why don't you join hands and come and let's work on it together? So I had actually also personally invested quite a bit of capital to and owned Care and built CareFit along with CureFit as well. So that's how it started, and it's been a great journey. I think fundamentally it's been just great learning, right? At some level, I didn't know India. It was very early to understanding. Yes, I had all this theoretical knowledge, I had all this education, but obviously building a business in a different country is very different. And probably the right way is what I had done was to start somewhere, understand what happens, how the lay of the land is, meet a lot of people. So I think the amount of learning was incredible.
I want to understand this better. So CareFit was like a subsidiary of CureFit, and in which you were a co-founder, like you put in your own money in it also. But it probably would have been largely funded by CureFit, and like the majority stake would have been with CureFit. You were like a entrepreneur in residence, kind of a.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, it was the one vertical which we did that, and the whole idea was how can you really build out. Again, we just thought primary care was just an open space. There was just large amount of, in India, it's at some level a broken system. You know, the wait time, the lack of technology, the kind of some level lack of quality or transparency, you know, whether you go to a lab or a doctor. So how can we really go out and build that out, right? So that was the whole remit of building out CareFit. And we thought eventually at longer term, it makes sense to build this out. And there's no way, if you take a 20, 25-year view, even that long term or 15-year view, that there won't be some very large business, right? Now you see many businesses in the US, right? One Medical go forward, some in China as well. So it's a matter of time till it comes here, right? So how do you really build that out?
So what was the business model like? So in a way, Practo is also into primary care, you could say, but their model is to aggregate doctors and maybe digitize patient records. So what was the model for CareFit?
So obviously, yeah, I think we were very clear that we wanted to always build a hybrid online-offline solution. So we were probably the first way where we actually went out and built primary care clinics, but wholly differentiated centers. So I don't think you'd find any of that in India, even in Europe, right? In fact, a lot of people came to the our center. So the whole idea was we actually, because we felt in India still the offline touch point for primary care is still very important. At that time also, telemedicine was not allowed. There was a lot of restrictions on it. Obviously, COVID changed it. So we ended up going and building about 8 or 9 centers, primary care centers, which were highly tech-enabled centers, which was but full stack. It had doctors, your labs, your pharmacy, various other procedure services, and the whole experience was pretty much tech-enabled. You book an appointment, say at 10 through the app. You go there, there is no wait time. Your consultation, if it's at 10, will happen at 10. Your full body checkup, which we did, which we completely disrupted, right? A full body checkup in India will take half a day. We used to do it in 60 minutes, you're in and out, right? So it was and everything on your app, right? Reports immediately come to it. You know which room you have to go to. So it was, how do we really bring this whole element of family doctors? So you're in one place, one center, your experience is just amazing. And so we obviously went ahead and built it out, right? We actually launched it around 2018, mid 2018, and in Bangalore only. We wanted to start in Bangalore, and the idea was let's get to a few hundred centers across the country. And then eventually, once telemedicine is allowed, we wanted to attack both hybrid online, offline. We wanted to attack chronic care. So we built it out, and great learning, right? We started our first center, which was a 10,000 square feet center. We had doctors hired, a staff of nurses, practitioners hired, pharmacy lab. We built our own in-house lab because we wanted to be fully vertically integrated and understand the business end to end, go the hard way. We didn't want to go aggregate doctors. So we started it then, and it was obviously a great experience. One, understanding how do you work with doctors in India, how easy is it to get doctors into a place, how tough is it to have those conversations. They have, obviously, doctors, given experience with various platforms, are still very skeptical, right? So how do you really build that entire business, and how do you make it work, right?
On paper, it sounds utopian, like, everything on your mobile app. It's something I would have loved to have as my primary physician replacement. But did it pan out that way in reality, or were there like real world challenges which you discovered when you started implementing this vision? Like, what were the obstacles you encountered?
No. See, a lot of us heard before, even before we went to it, we would always hear, primary care centers in India don't work. It's tough to get the doctors. We face tons of challenges, right? As with any business. In healthcare, I think the biggest business is doctor is still important. How do you attract the right doctor? How do you retain them? How do you make sure the right monetary scheme? How do you make the right money in primary care, right? With consults, diagnostics. How do you basically make this whole center offline business model work, right? Because if it's one-off ticket items, it's not easy, right? But we fundamentally felt that, see, the whole system at some level, and I still believe healthcare in India is, it's at some level amazing, right? For the population, kind of just the service delivery, the cost, the level of technology in IPD, it's incredible. You don't even get that in the US. You wait 2-3 months. But at some level, the whole experience from a consumer standpoint, it's fairly broken, right? The average wait time today at a hospital or clinic is 80 minutes. You just go there, you wait, the experience, you don't even want to go to a clinic. It's not pleasing. You go for a checkup and your whole day is taken. So we fundamentally felt that we will figure out the business model. Do consumers need it? And if consumers need something and they are willing to pay and they see value in it, there's absolutely a massive business you can build. And we do, you're right, it does seem illogical at some level, but I mean, a lot of people thought,
No, I'm not saying illogical. I mean, it sounds amazing. Okay, that's the word for it. Too good to be true. Okay, I would have loved to have this, but did it pan out this way, or what were the stumbles? Like, why isn't it all over the country? Why isn't there, like, why isn't everyone going to a Cure.Fit?
So basically, see, there's a bunch of challenges we faced, right? Again, making sure the business model works. How to, like I told the doctor, but if I were to judge in a year and a half, when it was March 2020, we had about 8 centers, a couple of centers which were larger in HSR Indranagar, working very well. The biggest way I judge it for a 1-year business or 1.5, it was loved by consumers. We had this rating scale of 4, it was 3.85, the highest rated. It was more high rated than Cult. 70 plus NPS for a healthcare brand, which was just not heard of, right? So people loved it. People absolutely loved it. We would hear stories where people would come out of different cities just to get the health checkup there. And we were obviously thinking of other services. I think there were a few other, the problem with offline we stumbled with was also real estate so important, the cost, right? So location becomes very important. Now with high rental, how do you make the whole thing work? But we felt we had got into what was working, and our whole plan was let's move it from 8 centers and now scale it, right? Once at that time, obviously COVID hit us, or COVID hit very badly, and entire offline pretty much shut, right? And also CureFit had huge offline footprint, be it through their fitness centers, be it through kitchens and this. And I think for sake of caution, this was obviously at that time the smallest business, right? The early business. And today we still feel we should have had it, but it was, I think, being prudent with cash, and we didn't know how long the pandemic would hold. We had taken a call in many instances to close all offline, right? Because of, so it was purely COVID, but we were growing 40-50% month on month at that time. Ratings were very high. And we see now a couple of players have seen that previous model and looking at it. But do I think if you take another, say, 5-6 year view, is there a possibility? I don't know, it's a different life or different time. Do I absolutely think it will work? It will happen and someone will do it here. Maybe at some level it could be a combination of us. I don't know, but customers loved it, and it's very, very tough. I mean, as you know, for a customer to love a B2C product, and that was actually the true testament. But obviously, of course, external factors also hit. If COVID didn't happen, I mean, I'm sure it would have been multiple cities right now.
So you're saying fundamentally it worked, but external circumstances kind of spoiled the party.
Yeah, see, it worked in the sense that there was still a lot of things for us to figure out, right? But that's with any startup. I think there's things to figure out on business model. How do you scale it in? What's the right format? How do you get the right mix? Is it a franchise? Do you get doctors to invest? It works just from pure customer love. I have no doubt. Like every one, 8 or 9 people out of 10 who came there just loved it and would keep repeating. So yeah, absolutely it worked. And obviously then external factors kind of mitigated some of it.
What did you do then? I mean, essentially the business you were running, which you had equity in, kind of like it got shut down.
Yeah, we decided to obviously move the offline bit. But obviously at that time, what happened is we then obviously pivoted at that time. Then the whole telemedicine was allowed, and we basically pivoted fully to digital, right? And within a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, we completely changed, and more for our customers, right? People who are, because we had all the tech, all of it. So we pivoted to doing teleconsult, telemedicine across the country, at-home diagnostics, so various other solutions that we gave. But it was at this point where there was a lot of obviously debate on what we wanted to do, right? The overlying ambition was still how do we really build obviously digital health company. I think at that point also a few months into the pandemic, we saw pandemic is here to stay. And it was also right for CureFit to really focus on fitness first and really win that market and dominate entirely, which they're doing. But there was obviously for me, and I think it was very clear, I just still felt healthcare is just a massive opportunity. There's something to be done. And while doing all this care, right, if you had taken a 3-4 year view, our actual ambition was to really solve through physical and online chronic care, actually, because obviously we had one-off consults, checkups, but we really thought the business is to be in subscription business. And chronic care was always a massive space, right? So it was in that time where fundamentally believed that there is no right time there. And at that point, they had a lot of news, across the world where a lot of chronic care startups just were doing extremely well in the US, who were at it. And I would follow them very religiously. And we felt that in India, there is no world in which I fundamentally believe that there won't be one or two very, very large businesses solving for chronic conditions, because India is unfortunately the capital of chronic conditions, right? 160 million diabetics and pre-diabetics, hundreds of millions of people who have hypertension. So it was in this point we thought, okay, offline's done, and I wanted to still do health. What is the real problem in health we wanted to tackle? And I looked at everything. I looked at everything right across the spectrum. We obviously had significant IP capabilities that we had built we could reuse and really go to market quickly or build a full stack solution. So tried to understand every player that's doing everything in the US and India. And we felt really, if you take a long term, the problem to really solve in India is chronic conditions, because there is no world in which this is sustainable, right? Because 10-20% growth of chronic conditions can't be sustainable. There has to be solutions. But again, it came to Akshay that we felt that the whole system today is broken. People are not solving for outcomes in chronic care. People are just doing transactional based services and saying, how do I just one off, whether it's I'm a doctor, help people like manage their condition, but not really deliver outcomes. So it was that time in which I'm very decided to very much focus on building a chronic care solution. And obviously, there's various solutions, right? You can do diabetes, hypertension, but we really felt that let's really deeply solve for one condition first. Let's really understand it and build a stellar solution there. And if you build that, then you can go across chronic conditions later, right? And the second real belief we felt that for most chronic conditions, lifestyle plays 70-80% of the role, lifestyle management, right? And which is where we understood also very fully. So can we combine all of that, to really solve for people to build outcomes? And that's when we decided we want to build this. And we also decided we will build it out very separately as a company because obviously the DNA, and that was a core learning, right? Building a medical business near a fitness business, like you say, is very different and tough, right? Because the way you attract customers, your go to market, the brand story you build is very different. So from about from about September 2020, built an entire team and started building.
Was this within that same legal entity, or did you like resign from there and start a new venture? Like,
yeah, so no, it's actually right now a separate legal entity. It's a separate legal entity. At that time, obviously, we were doing all of the POCs. Today, it's a completely separate company, independent company with venture capital funding. And we were very clear. I think it was very clear we wanted to build it out separately. A lot of the team that we built, obviously, or the team that we have today that we've managed to bring on board also includes few people from CureFit as well, who also believed in this solution, who wanted to build this out. But again, it was a move where you felt that could have obviously built various other businesses at CureFit, but I fundamentally believe there's just a massive solution here, massive outcome. And I think there was strong belief even within, especially Mukesh. I mean, he's also been real believer in chronic care as well. So, but I was very clear we had to build it out separately, separate team, and decided to go on.
How did you fund it then? Because this would have needed significant investment in technology upfront.
Yeah. So as part of obviously, I think our relationship understanding, right? We've got a lot of IP tech. A lot of the systems we built at Care could be reused, which we've reused. Also CureFit, I think early on, given I think relationship also committed money, right? And as you see, one of our investors is also CureFit, and we got other investors. So I don't think so. We managed to get early on. I think once we figured out the product, figured out the solution, we've got all of that kind of in place. But it is today now, yeah. So it was basically the genesis then, right? Knowing that there is just I don't know, no world in which I don't believe there's a massive solution you can build. And I don't know, I think our ambitions go outside India as well, maybe, right, one day, because 90% of a person who needs to manage diabetes is the same, right? So can we really build that out separately? And obviously at that time, there was a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions. A lot of people again asking, why do you want to go build this out again, do it separately, and do it just to kind of build out CF? But I think it was very clear. I think just if again, fundamentally, my real passion is to build something very big in healthcare, right? And I don't think there's a bigger problem statement than to build this, right? I think it's also very mission oriented to try get people, better lives, healthier lives. So we were very clear from day one. I think the entire team as well. We wanted to build a full stack solution, really drive outcomes. We didn't want to build any sort of aggregation tool for healthcare or any sort of things that will obviously you can scale quickly. But we wanted to see how do we like really tackle this solution, and that's how we went about it.
So you had the idea that, okay, let's tackle diabetes. You are not from a medical background. So how did you build something which gave medical outcomes? How did you bring in that expertise?
I actually think, Akshay, just the rule in life I feel is, I think everyone can learn any industry if they just at some level read. And I actually think having outside perspective is the best. I think many people who are bogged in an industry will always try to question or not do stuff because they think it can't happen. And I fundamentally believe that expertise you can get. expertise. There are great people you can hire, you can partner with to really understand. And so for me, on the outset, it was just simple. We felt, is there a massive problem? Yes. Is there actually a solution available? And have we seen it happen in silos? We've absolutely seen people, doctors, coaches in our network show massive outcomes for people, right? In their own way, but in a fragmented way. So is there an opportunity to build a full stack solution and help it scale to millions of people to see outcome? Yes. Now, once we realized that, and then we tried to understand how are different players tackling it outside India. In India, it was still very early. What are technologies you can use? And we also wanted to build a very technology-first company or product-first company because we think that's the only way you scale to hit millions of people, right? And we wanted to do digital first because obviously, different from primary care, is diabetes can be managed. Most of it is we are not tackling type 1 or we are not tackling very chronic cases. So once we understood that, we've also had a fundamental belief, and this was a DNA I learned from Cure.Fit, is get the right domain experts. And from day one, as soon as we decided, we always hire or get the right domain expert to help us, with the real domain expertise. So we got people who've been, today our medical director and various other people, that some of the most senior endocrinologists in the country and presidents of societies who've helped helped shape it, right? To really see what are outcomes, what are people saying. And once we, I think, had an overall structure in place, understood, we then really ran a lot of pilot studies. So it was very much ground up. It wasn't, let's just quickly launch something. We actually took a lot of time to understand pilots, see what users want, and then did it. But a long-winded answer to say, no, we had experts, but I fundamentally, yes, didn't have any experience in healthcare. The only little experience I had was in banking.
So tell me from a biology perspective, what was the solution? What was the problem that you wanted to target? What outcome did you want to deliver, and how did you go about delivering that outcome?
We wanted to solve was simple at some level. Is can we really help reverse chronic metabolic disorder? And this again a very long-term problem statement. Just because of the rise in chronic conditions in India.
What is a chronic metabolic disorder?
Yeah, what I define is, any conditions like diabetes, hypertension, or many diseases. The real issue is there's a metabolic disorder. There is some imbalance in your metabolic state, right? It is not at some level a real medical condition which requires surgery or anything. And there was enough science, but there is now emerging science that a lot of that has to do with lifestyle habits. A lot of that has to do with excess kind of carbs, insulin resistance, which I'll talk to about. So a lot of those issues, which basically means it's more than just a dietary disorder than anything like being a medical disorder, right? In the world before, in the 70s, 80s, there was fewer than 10, 20 million people who were diabetic, right? It was only in the 80s or 90s that this skyrocketed. And you must know that that came in conjunction with, the whole people promoting carbs over fat, fast food, and now it's 450 million people, right? But if it was always chronic disorder, I believe decades ago it would have been the same, right? So we said, how can we do that? Now, after we said that, we said, but let's just tackle one problem, like I said, and we said diabetes. And so when we understood, there's obviously different types of diabetes, but two most common ones are type 1 and type 2. Type 1 affects about 5 to 7% of the Indian population, but most of it is type 2. And type 1 is basically almost like juvenile. You generally get it when you're young. It's when your pancreatic cells, your beta cells in your pancreas are broken or destroyed. So you can't produce any insulin. So they only basically, and as you know, as soon as you eat food, blood enters into your system, and glucose is meant to help transport this into various organs in the body, right? But if you're type 1, you're not able to produce any insulin, right? Because basically your beta cells are destroyed, and this usually happens very early on. So it's called like almost a juvenile diabetes. So that can't be solved. That the only solution is you keep taking external injections. But we learned and we knew that type 2, which affects most people, is obviously in many points manageable and reversible for a huge amount of people. Because in type 2, the real root cause we are trying to solve is insulin resistance, which means that there is still, your beta cells are still functioning, but they're not functioning to the level it should, because basically excess kind of food gets deposited as fats in your liver, pancreas. So there is excess fat in all of these organs. So what happens is when your pancreas produces insulin, it creates this whole kind of system of insulin resistance because it produces insulin. There's excess fat in those organs, so insulin doesn't enter. So the reflex mechanism is to produce more insulin. So it's hyperinsulinemia. So which creates this whole effect of insulin resistance, right? And that is the real root cause, right, of type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes and early stage.
What are the symptoms of type 2 diabetes? Like, how does it manifest as a disease?
Yeah, I think very many symptoms. I think it really depends, but I think the most common ones people see is, I think one is obviously if you go through a test is elevated sugar levels, but it's basically you have various symptoms from some fatigue. Many people have significant weight gain. So 70% they say of people who are obese are more disposed to diabetes. So obesity, you feel more thirsty. There's frequent urination. You have this real mood swings because your energy levels spike due to in response to your glucose spike so variable. When you eat food, your sugar levels really shoot up, then they face a sudden drop. So you go through this real cycle, right? But many people for years, interestingly, don't know it or ignore it. People don't even realize. They say one in today, 6 or 7 people in India are diabetic, but most are not even aware. And we know aware itself is close to 100 million type 2, if you take a 3-4 year view. So these are obviously the symptoms, but I don't know if it's you, but pretty much everyone I talk to knows someone in their family or friend or relative who's diabetic or type 2 diabetic, right? So it's so common. But the unfortunate thing is people in India or world over have thought that if you have type 2 diabetes, it's fine, I'll live with it. And the first course of treatment that people are given is medication. And generally, it just becomes a case where lifelong, the doctor just tells you to take either increases the dose, increases the number, or eventually, as it keeps getting worse, maybe puts you on insulin. And obviously, there's so many associated complications with diabetes, but people generally feel that it's fine. I'm diabetic. I'll take medicine. I'll have a sweet, then take a medicine. So you're really treating kind of the symptom, but not the cause. And why? And what medicine does is it treats the symptoms there and then. I eat breakfast. I know my sugar level will spike, so let me have a pill. So then at least my sugar spikes are okay. So I don't face this reduction in productivity, energy levels, all of that. But that is never really a long-term solution. Or see, and for some reason, for something, many people go on to their 70s, 80s, then they're like, I'd rather take medicine and be okay. But I've had cases also in my family. My uncle, who's unfortunately even lost his eyesight due to diabetes, right? Because it can keep getting this worse. The moment you have medicines, go to insulin. Eventually, diabetes is probably the leading cause of today deaths in India, is the leading cause of kidney disease, retinopathy, pancreatic issues, heart issues. But people that once they get to 70, 80, they say they suffer something. But the real thing leading up to all of this was diabetes, right? And to my belief, and I'm not a scientist or medical expert, but I know if you take medicines 2-3 times a day, it can't be healthy, whatever you.
How is it detected that you have diabetes? Is it a sugar test?
Yeah, the actual test is a sugar test. So it's the main test people do is the HbA1c, a 3-month average sugar level test, which is called the HbA1c. And if you're above 6.5% on that test, you're type 2 diabetic. Between 5.7 to 6.4, you're pre-diabetic. And you're really disposed. And most, they say, I don't know, 70% pre-diabetic become diabetic. And of course, you're on medication. So the core is that people also take a fasting blood sugar test. So in your fasted state, what are your sugar levels? But the actual probably world over test that everyone sees is the A1C test. So we were saying, how can we really help people who feel that now their life has become, just medication and a live this life? How can we help these people to almost have a new lease of life, right? Because I don't know if you've talked to a lot of diabetic people, while they take these medications, they really struggle with energy levels. They really struggle with productivity. People are, I think, at the back of their mind. And while we built this product, we did so much of consumer research, talked to face to so many people to understand emotionally how do they feel, right? Because that is the real crux of also trying to solve it. So how do they really feel? And we know people are just not happy while they may not say it. We also realize many people just hate talking about it. People just don't want to talk about the fact they're diabetic because they feel they're stigmatized at some level. So we thought, how can we really So we tried, how can we help people manage it better? And we know that there's lots of books now, and one of the pioneers in this insulin resistance is James Fango. And a lot of people who feel that really it's a dietary disorder, diabetes. How can we really solve through a combination of technology, human coaching, and data to help people reverse type 2 diabetes and manage it better, which means we want to help people get off medication. We want to help people normalize their sugar levels and go to, our internal driving purpose is to enable people live a normal life. That's really what we wanted to do, because normalcy is underrated. And we know with the right kind of elements, right, if people make the right dietary choices, right lifestyle choices, they can. But it's very easy said and done, just go to a coach. But how do you really understand? Every human's metabolism is very different, and that's some of the technology we've built, right? Understanding how your blood sugar levels spike. We have this real-time continuous glucose monitor, and really give people a new lease of life, because there are some amazing doctors in India, and we work with some of the best ones there, right? But in many cases, and today it's a problem we face, is unfortunately in the system, there is also a case where obviously some doctors have an incentive to prescribe medicines, and consumers don't know much for it, right? And if a doctor prescribes a medicine in India, I will take it. But we know that for many of this, you don't need medication. So, and some of the results we've seen are fascinating. People who are 10, 20 years on insulin off it, right? So that was kind of the solution we were trying to build, to combine at the crux of it technology, where we can really understand your data, understand your individual metabolic state, what foods work for you and not, because each human's metabolism is different. Different foods react differently for me or you. And how do we then combine it with the right lifestyle advice and coaching? And at the core of, if today people ask, what are you really solving for? Obviously, all the technology is sexy, and understanding data is great. But the real product we have built is really trying to solve for human motivation and habit formation. Because at some level, people know who are diabetic. What do I need to do? You don't. I can easily say stop medicines, do this and that. But we know human adherence to motivation, or keeping them engaged, or keeping them sticking to a new habit, is very tough. So everything else we do, every product we build, is to really solve. This was the number one pain point we understood. The number one user gap we wanted to solve is habits and motivation. And around, we built the entire ecosystem, a solution to just solve for this one thing. Because if we felt we could get into the minds of a user to get them motivated to what we say and get them stick to what we do, they will see results.
What is the core solution here? Is it calorie restriction? Habit formation towards what end? To get people to reduce calorific intake, or what is it that reverses diabetes?
I wouldn't say it's as simple as calorie restriction, because there's also now enough science that suggests that the traditional way in the world has been, if you eat less calories and work out more, then you'll burn kind of fat and carbs. But realistically, no, right? Because I think there's still a significant amount of people who are type 2 diabetes who actually have perfect BMIs, who for them, they don't need weight loss, right? For us, it's not a question of calorie restriction. Yes, weight loss plays a huge part, given people are obese. Weight loss plays a huge part in helping people reverse diabetes. But we know that in Indian context, just calorie restriction won't work. So we are actually trying to solve, our real solution basically starts with what we call is a continuous glucose monitor, right? So we use this a continuous glucose monitoring technology. This is a patch which is placed at the back of your arm, and it gives you a sugar level reading every 15 minutes. This is actually the biggest game changer, Akshay, I would say, in diabetes management, because it's actually the first time ever, and this is US FDA approved. It came there about a few years ago, but the first time where every user has a real insight into how different foods and lifestyle habits impact their blood glucose levels. We for all this time had data on output. How many steps do I do? Or how do I really know what food works for me and not? A rice may work for me, but not work for you. A pizza may work for me, not for you. That is the gold mine of information. So we start with this technology called CGM, where we really know how does each type of food or lifestyle habit impact that individual, and see the real impact on their sugar level. We then combine this with medical experts. So every plan has a coach and a doctor who are giving personalized coaching for them on one, nutrition, on two, fitness, and three, mental health. These are the three cornerstones, right? Because we think precision nutrition is very important, which we do through obviously the CGM and all of it. We also go very deep on fitness because anything we want to sustainably reverse diabetes. You can always do restricted carbs, but we know that will bounce back. How do you get people out of their movement inertia and get working? And the third core element is really to solve for mental health because there is now science that most people who are diabetic have very elevated cortisol levels because of stress. So, real solution tackling these three, and all of this is done through the empathetic coaching. So, people who understand your data on the back end then give you the right plan for each of these. And how do you make sure people adhere to this on a ongoing basis? And obviously, how the whole coaching happens, how the advice is given through real biometric feedback. We get 1,300 data points from CGM. Our program also includes blood testing. So there's someone who goes to your house 4 times a year to understand your blood parameters. We have full integration.
What is that CGM?
It's a continuous glucose monitor, that technology. Yeah. So that technology, we have people who go to get all your tests at home 4 times a year. We know all your fitness data. How are you working out? So at the back end, our technology is working to understand each and every bit of a parameter. We will be able to predict, for instance, how will your heart rate be going forward? Because there is now using your HRV data, using your step data, you can also almost non-invasively predict your sugar level. So we'll be able to know when is the next kind of time coming for this guy where he'll feel like he needs to have something, right? So it is calorie restriction is something very small part of it. It is actually a very, we think, to really solve it, you need a full stack solution to solve it sustainably. Now, if you want results in 1 or 2 months and we have no program for 1 or 2 months, you can always, for a small number of people, go on a crazy diet, a keto diet. So, but one of our core building philosophy is not to do any drastic diets, not to do any fat diets. So no one in our program is actually assigned. It's very precision treatment for each individual.
The way to reverse diabetes is getting rid of fat in the body, or is it more complex than that?
I hope it was that simple. There's actually also two types of fat, subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. What you really need to get out is visceral fat, right? Which is the excess fat.
And what is the difference between these two?
Yeah, the visceral fat is all the fat deposit. Like subcutaneous fat, you can also see it on the outside. Sometimes aesthetically we feel it's bad for us, but it's actually not harmful fat. The real harmful fat for you is your fat in your pancreas, in your liver, that excess fat deposits, which is making sure that insulin is not working because the insulin is not able to penetrate, move the glucose in the blood, the different cells or organs in the body, right? That is the core issue to solve. How do you remove that excess fat over there? For people who also don't have that excess fat, the human body is complex, but at some level it's very simple, right? If you were to ask me what is the simplistic solution a layman can do is try and eat well. And this, I think, for a general health, right? Eat well, kind of work out, and kind of get your mental health in right. But if it was that simple, it would be great. But how do you really push people to do it? And how do you understand their body so they realize it? So, but in a nutshell, is to get rid of visceral fat in your organ.
What is the diet plan geared towards? Is it high protein, low carbs, or what?
In fact, we don't have a specific thing, right? And that's actually, I would say, the level of personalization we go to. I would say, see, we don't have anything. We don't do any keto diet. We don't say high protein, low fat. We actually, what we believe in is carb control, portion appropriated meals. That's, I would say, our guiding philosophy. So our philosophy is 80-90% of whatever someone eats at home, they should. Because if you give them any drastic diets, we know they'll follow it for 1 or 2 months and then they'll drop back. So we say that what we tell people is things around what to eat. So we may tell replace maida with wheat because we know exactly how does it work for the body. We'll tell you when to eat. So with the CGM data, we know, for instance, some people who eat on 9 or 10, it impacts their sugar level much worse off than at 7. So we won't tell them stop rice or eat cauliflower rice. We'll tell this. Or how much to eat. We'll then portion appropriate rather than 4 chapatis. We'll start with 3. But all of this is by making small habit changes. That's what I was saying earlier. They're very, very, you won't notice. Every day a user is given 1 or 2 interventions. Do this many steps. And some of it may seem very simple, but we are really solving for the habit loop, like this atomic habits book, I don't know if you've seen, but really solving for small habit change because once these come, you'll easily follow it, right? And sustainably move it.
How do you build habits in people? Did that book, Atomic Habits, give you some guidelines to follow?
I'm a big believer in that book. In fact, we talk to a lot of people, Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, There's various, obviously, books we read. Atomic Habits, something we drew a lot of inspiration from. But in human reality, it's the right? Every one of us has this various cue cravings, kind of responses. So what we are trying to solve with habits is how do we get people to get rid of many bad habits and make small incremental good habits. So we don't want people to, which again goes to our philosophy, do drastic diet changes, do anything drastic because that won't help. And our program, when people buy the type 2 plan, it's only one program. You buy a 12-month plan because most people, and how it's broken down to is the first 3 or 4 weeks, we just understand your body. We get all the data. We know how your sugar levels spike at night. We get all your testing data. Then the next 3 months is focused a lot on bringing down your sugar levels, controlling the core. A lot of people see big changes in their sugar levels. But most people who have diabetes have other comorbid conditions, right? So the next 3 to 4 months is to solving the long-term issues on those other core metabolic issues, and then eventually get people to learn what they want to do. But how habits are done is it's a bit tough to explain. But if you actually see when someone buys the plan, they actually get our platform, our mobile app. You can't download it if you're not a user. But just the way what we've done is try to take inspiration from Atomic Habits, but bring it in a presentable, right way to the user.
Someone who's not read Atomic Habits, like, can you tell me what are those? What is the guiding philosophy of habit
The
building?
guiding philosophy is just small habit changes and do it over a longer period of time. So we would actually, once we analyze a user and we see that we know this user in 5 months to reverse diabetes needs to start walking 10,000 steps. We know that if he's doing 0 or 500 steps, there's no way it's happening immediately. I think previously, if you go to a trainer, they would say start getting on immediately. But we know that something sustainable, we'll start in the first week just saying do 1,000 steps a day and do it after this, do 1,000 steps, then slowly, incrementally increase it. I know it sounds very simple, but how we kind of show him how his streaks happen, how is he seeing progress? Because with all of these habits, people also need to see results. If they don't see results, they'll drop off. So they'll see as they start doing 1,000 steps, as they start adding some almonds before a meal, they'll actually see weight reduction and various other changes, right? Because throughout the program, we also have them measure their sugar level. So every week, we try and get one, physical, clinical, mental, or social change, right, for them. And they can be very other small habits, right? We won't, like through the CGM data, there's very interesting data. If you have, say, a pizza or a beer, your sugar level spikes very immediately. But we actually tell people have some high nutrient food like walnuts or almonds before it, and it reduces. One of the core advice we give, for instance, is we tell people, again, this way will be very personalized, but after a meal, for most diabetics, their sugar levels spike. So doing 15, 20, 30-minute walk right after, and today 70-80% of our users do it, they see no sugar spike. And the real thing about habits is you do something for 21 days, it automatically becomes a habit, right? Because today we wake up, we know we have to go to brush. Now, how do I make sure that we tell these guys associate a habit with what you're doing? So we know that similar, you wake up, you say, I have to have a brush. So we tell people, you've had food, now you really need to have a walk. Like those are kind of the connections we'll form with habits. And that's obviously what Atomic Habits also comes to. But those are really the habits trying to be formed.
So you're saying build connections and slow incremental changes. These are like the two.
Because it's very simple, right? Yeah, because you have, all of us will have your cue, right? When they say cue craving. So your cue, for instance, what Atomic Habit saying is, for instance, your cue is I wake up. So the next thing you do is brush. You associate one event with the next. Now, how can we associate those events? And again, it's good habits. It can't be bad habits. So if I associate now eating and post eating lunch, I associate it with a walk. It almost becomes dead tone for me that now for the next few months, I will pick a place where I can eat food and do it. But it's not easy, right? It's not easy in practice. So how do you bring it alive on a platform for the user? How do you make the coach encourage you to do it? How do they also see results within? So it almost becomes deadpan for them, right? So we want to bring those interconnections, and that's a huge element of it. We also don't want to stop people because in an Indian context, there's so many festivals, things. We don't want people to go on a Diwali and stop sweets. We know it won't. But we want them to say when is the right time you can eat it. And say you've done these things today, you need rewards. That's part of the habit loop. You need cheat days, you need rewards. So we also make sure there's certain reward days for users, right? When they still won't see results. So that's how we are trying to really kind of solve this issue.
How do you, so Like you're saying that it is highly customized for each person. The diet recommendation will vary. It's a very knowledge heavy kind of a thing. And how do you institutionalize that knowledge base? This sounds like you would need a very, very massive library of knowledge where you could, and you also need some sort of a way for the software to suggest to a coach that, okay, this is what you should recommend. So how do you like get this knowledge base institutionalized? And I'm sure this is like a continuous process and probably it's still happening, but tell me about that.
Yeah, it's absolutely a continuous process, but I think we've had some benefit at some level. Most of us built, or as I told you earlier, could have very good already existing information, data, or a whole IP or technology we built with care, right? But realistically, Akshay, what people or consumers see is kind of the coach and the plans, but that is actually the beauty of the technology we've built, kind of all the AI on the back end, which is analyzing each and every data point. So with the CGM device, the continuous data monitor, we get glucose monitor, we get 1,300 data points over a period of 14 days. There is zero intervention today from a coach or user. We actually have predictive food scores. Obviously, this is the whole data science engine we've built or team we've built. And that data is today we are able to correlate each and every type of macronutrient to food and how will it impact it for that user. That for us is actually at some level the easier part, because it enables us to scale, because as you get data points and we'll keep improving.
These data points will essentially help you tell the patient what not to eat, right? Because if you see that whenever people eat a certain type of food, the sugar level spikes up. So then your system will tell you, okay, these are like red flag foods, so to say.
Yeah, and not only that, right? And tomorrow we'll know that because of our database of 1 lakh or so foods, tomorrow if we know that, say, a pizza has very similar nutrient content to a pasta, the system will flag that given the macro and micronutrients for that food, this will definitely impact your sugar level the same way. But that is so obviously this huge amount of data science we're doing. We're like churning lots of data, which is very important. But to your point, today we have a lot of also the whole meal templatization. How do we, really suggest the right things accurately for the user? So that is the element of deep tech, right? So on the outside, it may seem like there's a coach and there's some users, but the real, I think, secret sauce in this is how do you combine all of that data and analytics? How do you present it to a coach? How do you present it to a user? How do you provide outcomes, right? Now, on the back end, there are tons of processes going on for us to understand every user, but that is all done today internally.
So, but say stuff like giving a diet plan, giving an exercise plan, and telling them what so giving those kind of recommendations, is that information institutionalized that you just need a high empathy person to come in and the system will tell him, okay, this is what you should recommend? Or do you need people with domain expertise to come in and be coaches? As of now, where are you at?
No, I would say it's a mix. I think now you also need domain. We'll always have domain expertise, because we think, see, also for a user, they need to have, one is not only suggesting, but who can answer the questions, be with them throughout. But we eventually also want to make the life of that coach easier, because at some level, even today for a doctor, it's very easy, right? Because most of the doctors at some level, if you see in India, will prescribe the same 20 medicines for a fever or this, right? So it's quite easy to templatize that once you understand. So similarly, depending on the user, their parameters, for fitness is actually extremely easy. And we have a proprietary algorithm for that. So I think it's a mix where we do obviously provide the right suggestions for the coach, but true personalization or empathy also comes with the coach being there and being able to override and do certain things.
Do your coaches need to be domain experts in diet and fitness, or do they need to be domain experts in habit building? In the sense that what is the focus of the coach?
I think the core focus today is diet and nutrition, or I would say fitness, everything. Every one of our coach goes through, we have actually this really comprehensive training program. See, there is no real, I think habit building is an element of two things. In fact, all of our coaches are not only upskilled on diet, nutrition, but very deeply actually on mental health. Mental health is one of the core things people are done, because habit building, fitness, all of it. The mind of a diabetic is very different. So they're also very upskilled on mental health, what to do, how to handle situations. Domain expertise helps in diet, because a core aspect obviously of this is the foods you eat, but after that, that's probably only 50%. After that, it's how do you interact. But for each of them, no coach will just come through the system without that training. And we will keep evolving it. We may have a mix tomorrow of people where we'll be able to bucket which users need more of diet, which users need more of fitness. So that will be an ever evolving process. Today, most are nutritionists.
And what is the training they go through? Is it your own course?
All in-house. We are full stack vertically integrated. See, for us, we think just consumer income, experience, outcomes, all of that is very important. So I think training is running.
I guess the real path to scale would probably be being at a position where anybody can become a coach once they undergo the training. You don't need people who have too much of subject knowledge, but you probably need people who have empathy. You hire for empathy, and the rest of it, the system takes care of it, in the sense that giving recommendations and what are red flag items or what are good to eat items, and all of that happens through the system. And probably they do still need to know the language, and hence they undergo training, but the only thing they need coming in is empathy.
I think a mix, yes, Akshay. See, at some level, I think our product is still dealing with, you still need domain expertise. And see, path to scale, I don't see any issue, right? There are, fortunately enough, in India, thousands of people who've done the MSc nutrition, a few 15, the double digit thousands who've done BSc. Because why I'm saying empathy alone won't be enough is it is at some level a medical disorder too, right? So these coaches will also need, diabetes experts also need to know diabetes specific medications. You don't know how each different user escalates. The dosage, the hypoglycemic event still requires that, right? So it won't be as easy for us to get a fresher who's well spoken to really do it. But scale and getting coaches will not be an issue. But obviously, how do you make sure it's just so seamless for a user? And I hope that's what we've cracked, and that's in our DNA, right, to build. But you will still need fair amount of good domain expertise, right? But also with every plan a user gets, there's also a doctor to help manage it. But we want to make sure also coaches are equipped to handle those situations.
So tell me about the customer journey, like when a customer's like starting from where a lead is generated. Say somebody fills up a form on your website. So what's the journey?
Yeah, so a customer generally today, once they form a lead or they buy a plan, many buy either directly, they can.
Is it a personalized sales process or is it pure online checkout?
You can buy directly from the website, or you can kind of have someone assist you in the sales. But once you buy it, you just basically download our app, and the whole process starts actually as soon as, because pre-purchase you already put in your address and everything, and once you buy, you actually have this really cool smart kit that gets delivered to your house, which includes all the integrated devices. You get a continuous glucose monitor, and then you get glucometer, strips, and lances. It's all packaged in a Sugar.Fit box.
What about fitness trackers?
What we do is we integrate with fitness trackers. So we have all that data, and we see that most of our users today have that data, whether it's fitness devices or Google Fit, Apple Fit, and most don't want additional extra, and it's more money, right?
What is the pricing?
So I think, on average, I see people generally for a year, it's anywhere from about 25,000 to 30,000 a year, roughly, is the price.
And is it paid lump sum or like installments or what?
Generally lump sum, and it includes all of this. So first, your welcome kit and devices get delivered. You then get this onboarding call from a health coach, right, who welcomes you to the program, talks about the program, what to expect. Then you can actually on the platform book your diagnostic test. You just schedule what time you want to come, what date and time. Now, a phlebotomist comes to your house, takes a comprehensive blood and urine test. After that, then you basically have the same phlebotomist also installs your CGM device. So there's also someone who will come installs it and activates it.
Install it as in, do you remove it when you're sleeping?
No, it's 24 hours, up to 14 days. You can shower with it, you can play with it, you can do whatever you want. And it's US FDA approved. It's no issue.
So it's almost like a Band-Aid strip, something like that. Like obviously bigger in size, but something like that.
It's just a coin-shaped device actually. So not even that big. Literally, I think a 1 rupee coin.
And the contact is with the skin only. Like there's no.
Yeah.
How is it measuring sugar without drawing blood?
It picks interstitial fluid. So interstitial fluid doesn't mean you need to go and prick the blood, but that itself gives you kind of blood glucose value.
The 14 days you're saying, that's like the battery life. Like after 14 days, it needs to be charged.
Yeah, that's the device life actually. And with 14 days, we have just enough readings for us to correlate and do everything we want to.
Sorry, 14 days is battery life or device life?
No, device life. There's no battery. It's just one device. It gets installed into your place, and the life of the device is forever. Exactly. Obviously, people later, if they want to avail, they can avail. But I mean, with one, we have all the data we need to kind of correlate, do everything we want for you.
So that one 14-day reading is enough for you to then do the personalization.
Exactly. Because we know 80-90% of what you eat, how your trends are, how your macro, micronutrients react, exercise. And then obviously, like I said, the person comes, takes all your tests. Then within 24 hours or so, your lab reports come. They come to you, and then you just need to schedule a call with the doctor. And the doctor basically understands your history and then understands kind of all your lab reports. And then basically now on a daily basis, the coach is monitoring you. Obviously, the CGM is installed, so we're getting all the real time data. We're seeing how is your sugar level moving at night, in the morning, and we some super cool insights, right? We notice many people who are taking night medication don't need it. On this 14 days, obviously the coach is talking to you, understanding your data, seeing if there are any spikes, when do you go to hyper, because those are the worst episodes for a person who's diabetic, right? Hypoglycemia is where your sugar levels just drastically drop. And that can be at some level quite catastrophic. You can faint. So you have a real drop. Hyper is so when it goes very high. Yeah, when it spikes very high. Many people actually suffer from hypo.
And what happens in case of hyper? Like hypo, you can get a blackout. And in case of hyper?
Hyper is the same, right? It's just elevated sugar levels. So you can start feeling dizzy. You can start feeling all sorts of jitteryness. Um, but with all of this, then we realize that we understand your data. So all this is coming. The coach is guiding you throughout, the time to see what's working, what's not. And then in this 14 days is when then also the plantation starts. Every day they're giving you weekly plans. They're giving you weekly nutrition plans, fitness plans. They know what you like, what you don't like. So they're titrating various things along that, right? And we not only provide the entire plan, we actually provide you, for instance, actually, even if it's fitness, and no, I think other platform does it, we also provide you the right content for fitness instead. So it won't be just do strength and conditioning yoga. We actually provide you the right content that you just need to do.
Okay, so like a video that you can watch.
Video can be live or DIY, and all of it is tracked, right? We have these things where we can track your calories, everything. So all of that is given now, updated on a weekly basis or daily. And the coach and user can just interact also on WhatsApp. We've done a very deep integration. They don't even need to do so. It's because people are coming there anytime. They can fill in the interventions there. They can log their meals, various things they can do.
So all the data entry can happen through WhatsApp.
Yeah, all of it can happen through WhatsApp.
Do people like click a photo of what they're eating and upload it on the app? And then you have like a machine learning, vision learning thing, which kind of guesstimates what is the calorie count.
Yeah, I think at some level it's quite accurate nowadays, and people can also leave audio notes wherever they want. And then after this, obviously, all the small habits and interventions are given. That's also tracked, and you can be able to see your progress. There's various gamification that's done as well. There's a whole also obviously for people community, to understand how people are doing as well. So this ongoing, and again, obviously for various people it may differ, right? When the week happens. Then after this, obviously, during this period to again measure your normal sugar levels, the coach we give you a glucometer strips whenever that needs to be happening. You can periodic doctor consults are happening, all the content is going. And then also every 3 months you have your whole blood test again to see what is your progress, how are you doing, and then also to solve for so every 3 months you have this HbA1c and FBS test to see what's your progress. During this time is when along this journey, hopefully for many people in 3 to 6 months, they're either off medication or significantly reduced, either off insulin or significantly reduced insulin, right? So this is where they see a lot of these things. Even after the 14-day CGM, the doctor will be there to guide the user, to tell them what went wrong, what went right. So all of that is there. And obviously all the data we are getting, right, through all your fitness devices, like we have all these parameters which are throwing up the right insights, what you need to do, what you should do.
If you like the Founder Thesis podcast, then do check out our other shows on subjects like marketing, technology, career advice, books, and drama. Visit thepodium.in, that is thepodium.in, for a complete list of all our shows.